Finally, could we say finally, the Calgary Flames have found themselves a stud number one goaltender? I mean, it's been 7 years since Miikka Kiprusoff has retired, and we tried so many different goalies over the years that we are bound to settle on someone and find someone that is a great fit. But I figured for talking about free agent frenzy, I think this deserved its own separate video to talk about that the Calgary Flames, they made the biggest splash when it comes to goaltending, as I felt we signed the biggest goalie available in free agent frenzy for 2020 to go into the 2020-21 season, and Jacob Markstrom. The Calgary Flames, they signed Jacob Markstrom to a 6-year deal worth $6 million a year. Overall, his contract is worth $36 million, and he turns 31 in January, and that's when supposedly the 2020-21 season is going to start. And some are maybe concerned about, maybe term and age. However, when you look at how goalies age, they definitely age a lot differently compared to forwards and defensemen. But when I commented about the signing on the Calgary Flames fan group on Facebook, I have 3 emotions that comes to the signing of Jacob Markstrom. I mean, I'm surprised first that Calgary actually finally spent the money on getting the top goalie on the market that was available. I say was the top available goalie in his prime, and he's coming here to the Calgary Flames. And he has proven, especially the last 3 seasons with the Vancouver Canucks, that he can be a top-notch goalie and that can play 55, 60 games a season. And I feel that we've made an upgrade if we have Jacob Markstrom as the starting goalie, and now if we committed to $6 million a season for 6 seasons, he has the net, and that's something that Calgary hasn't had since Miikka Kiprusoff retired, because we've gone through Kari Ramo, Jonas Hiller, and we've also gone through Brian Elliott. We had Mike Smith for a couple years towards the later part of his career. And then we did find David Rittich from the Czech Republic and has been selling in with the Calgary Flames, but he hasn't quite shown that he can consistently be a number one goalie, because, 2 seasons ago it was David Rittich and Mike Smith. Well, eventually Rittich started off as a starter, and then Smith took the net and led in the playoffs. And then this past season, we picked up Cam Talbot as a backup, and he ultimately took over the net for the Calgary Flames before the pause, and then he was the goalie that we ran with all the way in the playoffs through the play-in series, the qualifier with the Winnipeg Jets and the Dallas Stars, and we came so close to putting Dallas down 3-1. And then ultimately why the Calgary Flames were in a position to go after Jacob Markstrom was, well, ultimately it was a combination that the Vancouver Canucks, if you look at their playoff run, and I would say Jacob Markstrom was a big part in the Vancouver Canucks getting into the playoffs and being a big part of them winning the play-in series against the Minnesota Wild and going into the first round with St. Louis, and led them to the upset. And then the second round, I believe he got hurt, because I know Thatcher Demko played the games 5, 6, and 7 against Vegas, and he almost dragged them into the third round on his stellar play. That Vancouver is in a cap crunch when you have to consider that Thatcher Demko is their future, and then you had Miikka Markstrom, and his stock definitely has risen. But you also have to look at, Brock Besser, Quinn Hughes, and Elias Pettersson, and then of course next year with the Seattle Kraken expansion draft, where you can only protect one goalie. So it's a combination of all of that. And then when Cam Talbot hit the market for the Calgary Flames, ultimately Cam Talbot, the Minnesota Wild offered him a 3-year deal worth $11 million. So Cam Talbot is now going to the Minnesota Wild. And Calgary, for the longest time, has been looking for a stud goalie, and is Jacob Markstrom finally the goalie. And it's even more satisfying that we signed him away from the Vancouver Canucks, as we definitely seen a lot of him with the battles in the Pacific Division. However, just up the road, 3 hours north of Calgary, the Edmonton Oilers were also in on him, as Edmonton's also been in a similar position of trying to look for a stud goalie. And there was also reports that the Edmonton Oilers were looking to offer him $5 million a year. However, I think there was also reports that they were offering him 7 years, because the one thing that the Vancouver Canucks, I don't think, were quite prepared to offer, factor in their cap crunch and the Seattle Kraken expense draft, where you can only protect one goalie. And you would think between Thatcher Demko or Jacob Markstrom, if you had that as your tandem and you can only pick one of them, depending on what's available for Seattle next year, one of those goalies could be primed for taking. And one of the things that, there are a couple of things that Jacob Markstrom that was seeking that I would say we definitely would offer, was he's looking for term, money, and a no-movement clause. And the Calgary Flames were able to satisfy all that, because he has a no-movement clause on his contract. And he's here for 6 years. He'll be here until he's 36, 37 years old. We'll see how that turns out. But when you see the body of work of Jacob Markstrom, especially the last 3 seasons with the Vancouver Canucks, we have an upgrade, I would say. If you look at just him over Cam Talbot, and going back to the Cam Talbot contract, I don't think the Calgary Flames were willing to offer 3 years at $11 million over the term of the contract, after we only signed him for $2.75 million for 1 season, and Cam Talbot is 33, so he would be just as old as Jacob Markstrom at the stage of his career when the contract expires. But there's definitely a lot more upside with Jacob Markstrom, I believe, and that's where I was surprised that we actually did it. I'm also excited that seeing what he's done with the Vancouver Canucks, he's shown that he can be in the top 10 of the league in terms of goaltending, and you could probably say, given if we can get into the playoffs and what he's shown in the playoffs this past season, could we say we could potentially go on a run with Jacob Markstrom? I think we do have what it takes. But the only thing that I'm skeptical of on this is I'm cautiously optimistic, because the one thing I'm critical of with Brett Treliving as his time as general manager, I would say more often than not when we've made trades, they've been pretty good trades since he's been general manager. And I would say our drafting has definitely gotten a lot better as well under him. However, free agent frenzy is kind of where Brad Treliving is at best, because we've had some contracts that we signed on free agent frenzy that definitely did not pan out. Contracts that definitely came to my mind is Mason Raymond, Troy Brouwer, and James Neal. At least with the James Neal contract, we were able to trade it to get Milan Lucic, and while I say Milan Lucic is a fit on the Flames as a roster, if you look at the player, the cost is still a lot expensive, but when it comes to Mason Raymond and Troy Brouwer, those players eventually were bought out. However, I think things are definitely going to work with Jacob Markstrom here in Calgary, and depending on what kind of defense he has in front of him, he should have a little better defense to play in front of as well, compared to what he had in Vancouver, is that they were so-so defense. I know Calgary is probably going to be having a revamped defense themselves, but I think this is a better opportunity and better fit for Jacob Markstrom right now to succeed even more. And he would fulfill a need knowing that he's here as the starter. And if you actually look at his career numbers, believe it or not, he's actually still under 500 for his career. And actually, if you remember, even though Miikka Markstrom, I'd say up to this point, is known more for what he's played for the Vancouver Canucks. Actually, he was drafted originally by the Florida Panthers, 31st overall in the second round, back in 2008. Jacob Markstrom eventually came to the Vancouver Canucks at the deadline in 2014 as part of the Roberto Luongo trade. And then if you look at his career stats, as I mentioned, overall in the NHL, he's played 272 games with a combination of Florida and Vancouver. He has 110 wins, 118 losses, 32 overtime or shootout losses. He does have 5 career shutouts. He has a .280 goals against average and a .911 save percentage. And in his playoffs, which all happened this past season, this was the first time that Jacob Markstrom actually got to play in the Stanley Cup playoffs in the 14 games with a combination of the Minnesota Wild play-in series, the qualifier, and the St. Louis Blues and Vegas Golden Knights. He was 8-6 in 14 games with a shutout, 285 goals against average, and a .919 save percentage. So I'd say those are pretty good numbers. And the one thing I would get back to David Rittich in terms of still established himself as a regular NHLer, because the last couple of years David Rittich kind of was given the reins to be the starter, and then eventually he got replaced parts of the season and the playoffs. I mean, last year with Cam Talbot, and 2 years ago with Mike Smith, before Mike Smith went to Edmonton. I would say it would definitely be a nice tandem to have Jacob Markstrom and David Rittich, and could be someone that David Rittich can learn from, and the fact that we can split the workload more evenly. I mean, Jacob Markstrom, I think, will get more of the starts, but he has proven that he can play 55, 60 games, which is another thing to be excited for. I mean, this past season with Vancouver, I mean, they didn't play. It wasn't a full season last season, and I know that Jacob Markstrom also he had to deal with some personal issues with the death of his father, and which would be tough for anyone to have to deal with, especially in your 30s. I mean, I think that'd be a little too young to deal with. But this past season, in 43 games in the regular season, he was 23, 16, and 4 with 275 goals against average and 19 save percentage with 2 shutouts, and those are pretty good numbers. I mean, the season before in 18-19, when he played 60 games, he was 28, 23-9 with 1 shutout, 277 goals against average, and 912 save percentage. And even in 17-18, when Vancouver wasn't as good, because the last couple of years I think they've resurged a little more, in that he had played 60 games in 17-18, he was 23, 26, and 7. He had 2 shutouts, 271 save goals against average, and 912 save percentage. So I'm going to say those 3 seasons alone, and the last 2 seasons he was the team MVP. I am liking this move for getting Jacob Markstrom, and I would say it's some satisfaction that he used to play for the Vancouver Canucks. Now he's going to be playing for the good guys on the east side of the Canadian Rockies, and the fact that Edmonton, we were able to also beat out Edmonton, as they were also high him and looking to get him as an upgrade, and we were able to outbid Edmonton. I think there was a couple other teams. I think maybe Detroit was also in on him as well, as they had a lot more cap space, and Detroit's obviously moving on from Jimmy Howard. But the goaltending carousel definitely has spun around as I expected, as there was a lot of goalies available on the market. I mean, it was definitely apparent that Vancouver was going to move on from Jacob Markstrom, because the way how free frenzy started is that actually Braden Holtby for the Washington Capitals, formerly the Washington Capitals, and there was rumors that he was also possibly going to come to Calgary or Edmonton. I mean, Braden Holtby is actually from Lloydminster, and Samsonov has taken over the net in Washington. That Braden Holtby was looking somewhere else. There was rumors that maybe he's going to come here, and I would say it would have been a short-term solution, and I wasn't too sure if how he would fit in with Calgary, and would he actually be the starter or still be another platoon. But Vancouver actually ultimately signed Braden Holtby, and it's a more reasonable cap hit for them, that it was only 2 years, and I believe he's making $4.3 million per season, and they structured the contract a lot more that he gets paid more in the second year, try to factor in the Seattle Kraken expansion draft, because Thatcher Demko is going to be the future, and he'll be protected. And looking at the Calgary Flames, well, we're going to obviously protect Jacob Markstrom with the amount of commitment that we've made, and David Rittich will be a free agent, so obviously, he gets a more secure starting job right here in Calgary. They went in Vancouver that they couldn't meet his demands with the no movement clause, term, and money with their finances, and we were able to have more of a space and more of a desire to have a starting goalie. So, I mean, what do you think of the Jacob Markstrom signing? I mean, it just seems surprising that we finally took the plunge and signed him. I mean, it's definitely some commitment, but if you look around the NHL, it's kind of, I think we've paid probably just about, or even slightly less, when it comes to what would it take to get a stud goalie. now with the Calgary Flames. I mean, the highest cap hit is Carey Price with $10.5 million with the Montreal Canadiens, and yeah, you could say he's one of the top goalies in the league. But then when you're spending that much money on the just one player in net, and that's 1/8 of the salary cap, because it's going to be flat for the next few seasons. And now Montreal should be in better shape goaltending wise, is that they actually acquired Jake Allen from the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis was also looking to dump some salary as well, and they were also moving on because Jordan Binnington has taken over the Nets in St. Louis, so there should be a better tandem for Montreal. But then Sergey Bobrowski, well, that contract is starting to look a little stinky already, as last year Sergey Bobrowski was the top goalie available in the market, and Florida backed up the Brinks truck with him and paying him $10 million a year, and he still has 6 years left on that contract. And Florida, that's looking like a very stinky contract, even though just like Carey Price, Sergey Bobrowski has a Vezina trophy as well. And then Andrei Vasilevsky, well, he's just starting his contract that's paying him $9.5 million a year. Some are looking at him as one of the best goalies in the league, and most recently he led the Tampa Bay Lightning to the Stanley Cup. But other comparables with Jacob Markstrom that I'm going to say it's really not that bad of a cap hit is, well, Connor Hellebuyck, the goalie that recently won the Vezina Trophy with the Winnipeg Jets. He's just making about $6.2 million with his cap hit, so that's just a little less than what we're going to be paying Jacob Markstrom. How about Matt Murray? The Pittsburgh Penguins were kind of in a similar situation with the Vancouver Canucks, that they had two good goalies that they knew that if one of them was available for the Seattle Kraken, that they would probably get plucked. And I mean, Pittsburgh already had to deal with that with Matt Murray and Marc-Andre Fleury. So Matt Murray got traded to the Ottawa Senators, and Ottawa was looking to move on from Craig Anderson, as he's like 39 years old and he might retire. Well, Matt Murray is still a younger goalie who's already got 2 cup rings, but I think he's sort of fallen out of favor with the Pittsburgh Penguins, especially with the emergence of Tristan Jarry, and when they paid him and it was kind of apparent that they were looking to move Murray. Well, Matt Murray recently signed a 4-year deal worth $25 million, so that's just over $6 million for what the Ottawa Senators is committing for their goalie. And recently, well, Robin Leonard, who has taken over the goalie for the Vegas Golden Knights, well, he signed 5 years at $5 million, although they still got Marc-Andre Fleury with that $7 million deal, although he's going to be an expensive backup towards the end of his career, which there is some potential risk with this deal. But I mean, he's going to be 36, turning 37 at the end of his deal, and if we got great years out of him towards the end of the contract, I think that would almost be irrelevant. Or worst case scenario, we can always buy out the last year of the deal if we have younger goalies that pan out that comes in. Let's say a Dustin Wolf, for example. But it's definitely nice that the Calgary Flames finally, after 7 years after Miikka Kiprusoff retired, I think we finally got a stud goalie. And it was nice to see that we made the headlines and signed the top goalie. When I was making my videos the other day, I was looking at Twitter and said, Calgary Flames signed Jacob Markstrom, but we don't know about term or money, or nothing was officially confirmed yet, because the Edmonton Oilers are also after him, and I wasn't going to make a video on it yet, in case, let's say, things fall through and then suddenly you sign with Edmonton or somewhere else. And also a little later, because after when the deal got signed, and then I also had stuff to do and had my Thanksgiving dinner. So here I am. I'm just saying, I just expanding upon what I said on the Calgary Flames fan page group on Facebook, that I'm surprised, I'm excited. However, I'm skeptical at the same time, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I think we have finally got a stud goalie, and we can also ask this: do you like the deal? Do you like getting Jacob Markstrom for the goaltending to be the #1 goalie for the Calgary Flames? And could the Calgary Flames go on a nice run with Jacob Markstrom, and may I dare dream win a Stanley Cup with Jacob Markstrom? So what do you think? So anyway, if you want to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey, home the Flames, Hitmen, Roughnecks, and Stampeders, where we recently signed Jacob Markstrom, and I gotta definitely say he's gonna look good in red, based on how he's played with Vancouver, and that's going beside the fact that the Calgary Flames have also are going full retro and wearing their beautiful retro jerseys full time. But if Jacob Markstrom did what he did in Vancouver the last 3 years with the Calgary Flames, he's going to look awesome in Calgary Flames gear, and this contract will look good. I also do personal blogs, Attempt to Comedy, and I also do share my experience with them on the road or at a sporting event. So if it all sounds like you'd be interested to watch to follow along this Calgary sports fans journey, you know what you need to do. Just make sure you subscribe. And I also recently gave my thank you video that actually 200 people have done just that. That 200 subscribers have wanted to follow along with this Calgary sports fans journey. I also have my other social media links down in the description below for other ways you can follow me. So yeah, welcome to the Sea of Red, Jacob Markstrom, and I think we're going to like you here in Calgary. Definitely a lot more than you were in Vancouver, because I do remember the last Calgary Flames game I went to. It was Hockey Night in Canada. We were playing the Vancouver Canucks, and I felt that we outplayed you that night, but damn, you frustrated me then, Jacob Markstrom. You were stellar in that, and you looked great, and you led the Vancouver Canucks to the victory as they won in overtime. And I was the number one star, but you know what? That's going to be all forgiven now that you're playing for us. It's definitely going to be nice to hear Beasley say Jacob Markstrom, the starting goalie, and no one star a lot. We've been looking for a stud goalie since Miikka Kiprusoff. So welcome to Sea of Red, welcome to Calgary, Jacob Markstrom, and I'll see you in the next video.